Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Daddy eats lots. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me today to chat man stuff are Ryan and Maddie. Firstly, gents, how are you both?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. My brother and his wife just had their first baby on the weekend. So a little baby girl has come into the world. So family was up, mum and dad were up here as well. So yeah, a joyous occasion up here for us at the moment.
Have they named said child at this stage? Can you disclose that?
Yeah, Stella is the name they've chosen.
It's a lovely name.
Yeah.
They're in for the ride of their lives.
Very exciting.
What about you, Ryan? How's your day?
Yeah, I've had a day that I will happily forget, but it's almost done, which is good. My fur child needed a tooth removed because he fractured it, and fingers crossed not cancer, but yeah, $1,000 later and a long surgery and a very, very long day at the office. It started at 5 a.m. today. I'm quite happy to be seeing the end of today.
Oh, and of course, you are also doing Feb Fast at the moment as well. So if anyone out there wants to pledge a few dollars to the Ryan Ebert Feb Fast page, we'll pop that in the show notes for this one, actually. So yeah, do support Ryan while he goes
Wonderful.
stone cold sober for 28 days or 29 days this February?
I don't know, but I was like, it's the last day of January. I should have a drink. And then I got too busy and then I forgot to do that. So I'm definitely going to get 29 days.
Well, I think that's I think it's what people should do if they're going to attempt Feb Fast. Maybe have a crack at it when it's 28 days one year and don't go on a leap year.
Exactly.
Today we're going to discuss a day in the life of one Mr. Ryan Ebert. Of course, I did my schedule for last week, what my general routine of a day looks like, and tonight Ryan will be sharing his average day. So Ryan, over to you, my friend.
One of the reasons that we're doing this is to sort of showcase the different lives, I guess, of modern men today. So my average day, and I'll sort of map it over a week because I hold a number of roles. So I've got a director role with a small business that I started 5 years ago in occupational physiotherapy that I'm still somewhat involved in, but much more from a director level. I have a 4-day-a-week corporate healthcare divisional manager job, which can be at times very, very intense, especially when it's really a 5-day job in 4. And I have a teaching job at Swinburne University, which is also a 2-day job in 1. So my days kind of blend to depending on whatever day it happens to be. If it's a Wednesday, it's a Swinburne day. If it's every other day, I kind of fit and juggle all the other bits and pieces, but I don't have kids. So I certainly have it easier than, I guess, any parents out there. Mostly this year, and I noticed some real benefits last year of getting up at 6 a.m. So I've tried to go one better this year. So most of my weekdays now start at 5 a.m. or at least between 5 and 5:30. Typically, I will get up, try and resist coffee for the first 30 minutes, doing a bit of flexibility stretching stuff at the moment. So I spend a bit of time with that, might do a little bit of journaling. Then I'll have a warm coffee in my hand whilst I do some meditation in the morning. So last year we did a transcendental meditation course, which is 20-minute meditation sessions. So I'll do that in the morning and then start having a coffee. And most mornings I will get some form of exercise in. So sort of basically at the moment, how it's working is 5 till 6 is, I guess, Ryan time. And my partner, TK, she very much does not like to crack up before 7. So it's very much Ryan time, which is nice. But yeah, so 5 till 6, I kind of do a bit of meditation, a little bit of stretching, have a coffee. I'm doing boxing classes at 6, 2 days a week. And then one day I'll usually go for a run, maybe hit the gym. Or if I do have a lot of work, I will actually just get cracking with work at around 6 a.m. till probably 7:15. And that I find extremely productive because, again, you don't get bothered by, there's not many stupid people out there that are up working at 6 a.m. So you don't get phone calls, emails, those kind of notifications are all pretty light. About 7:15, TK will wake up. I will be a good partner and make her a morning coffee because I've usually been up for about 2 hours. So I can be a bit chatty in the morning, which can annoy her as she's dreary-eyed and I've been banging around for 2 hours. And then by about, usually out the door by about 7:45, 8 o'clock. So depending on where I work, which is split at the moment between the city, home office, that is rarely at the moment, but I do try and do once every 2 to 3 weeks, a day at home. Swinburne University, which is in Hawthorn, so for those not in Melbourne, so about 20 minutes out of the city, up in North Melbourne, so and a little bit, we've got an office space in Richmond as well. So all very central Melbourne, but yeah, depending on what my day looks like, depends on which office I go to and which team I'm managing. And then usually I've found this year by getting up most mornings at 5:30, there are those mornings where you do just wake up and you go, no, I'm not getting up till 7, but thankfully they're few and far between. But at the moment, that is actually really helping me sustain my current workload, which is definitely, I would say, not on the healthy side of the work-life balance situation, but I figure that's okay at the moment because we have some ambitious goals, 28 at the moment, and we still don't have kids. So going pretty hard and then planning on pulling back in a few years. But yeah, so I'm usually in the office, say 8:30, and then it can really be, I guess, a day in the life of is anything from a day of 10 meetings was my day yesterday, my Monday, which was a lovely corporate office day, which was, yeah, genuinely 10 meetings, most of which half an hour, many of which back to back with the division that I manage. It could be seeing a patient or two. A lot of, usually at the moment, we're turning around and we're growing a fast growing business at the moment. So a lot of activity on the business development front, managing reporting, managing my team, which, you know, PHW, we've got a number of people, and thankfully I have very good people that are managing that. My corporate role, probably in the field of about 20 odd at the moment, but supposed to grow very, very quickly in the next few months. And then with my teaching role, we're actually starting a new course. So usually, yeah, another 2 coffees will happen between 9 and 1, and generally a bunch of meetings, phone calls, just pretty much trying to create momentum with all of our business and what we're doing, but a whole bunch of variety, and that I think keeps it pretty fresh. I will have usually a speedy lunch around 12:30, of which I've most days fasted. So pretty much start eating about 12:30, finished by 8 o'clock with food, and then I'll do the 16 hours off, 8 hours on, except Sunday. We religiously will go out to brunch because we are lucky enough to live in Melbourne, and it's sort of a non-negotiable thing with me and my partner as a kind of our time. But besides Sunday, maybe one breakfast meeting during the week. I'll pretty much fast from there. And I do get most of my work done up till that 12:30, because when you do eat and you are fasting, you will have a little bit of a crash in the afternoon. So that's when I try and bank in the afternoon to do things that I don't think are high value tasks, which is emails, phone calls, the real constant notification stuff that people can really get bogged down. That makes you feel like you're busy, but you're not achieving the bigger pieces of work, I guess. Usually finish work, depending on the day, but say 5:36 will be when I finish work, depending on where my location is. Come home, have dinner, or because we do live in very inner city Melbourne, you know, probably 2 nights a week, we will just coordinate to, because we're both working professionals, catch up 6:37 somewhere in the CBD South Bank But yeah, come home, sort of have dinner. Depending again on the day, may punch out a little bit more work, but usually because most mornings I get to exercise, I get to wind down a little bit. If there's an episode of The Simpsons on, I definitely jump on that. If not, just usually try and watch something a bit light-hearted, or when Billions returns, I very much will be watching that because highly addicted to that show. And then, yeah, maybe a little bit of journaling, a little bit of cleaning, a little bit of playing with the fur children, which are our 2 rabbits. And then I try and wind us up about 9:30, but usually I try and go for 9:30 because obviously I get up early. TK goes for 10:30 because she likes and gets energy at night. So we usually wind up somewhere in the middle around 10. A little bit of reading and then, yeah, crash out, set myself up for the next day. And that at the moment, just with the current workload, so we've got a new startup that we're trying to get off the ground as well. Amongst all of that, so most Saturdays I'll get along to 8 a.m. yoga, and because my partner, she on Saturdays works as a psychologist at the old health clinic that I used to have before we sold that, I will punch out a couple of hours worth of work at the home office or at a local cafe, which is one of my treats that I really do enjoy working from cafes. Yeah, sort of punch out work until about a late lunch when I'll catch up with her, and then the weekend will pretty much start from there. So I guess it's not really a day in the life of, it's more a week, but yeah, that's what the days are looking like at the moment.
Going back to one of the things you mentioned at the beginning of your rolling week/day, transcendental meditation. What's your chant or your mantra?
Good question. You're not allowed to say. So I'm not a great student of that because technically you're supposed to do 2 times 20 minutes. Non-negotiable, I do get the morning in. I'm probably tracking at the moment, if I'm lucky, maybe twice a week of getting the afternoon in. But yeah, surprisingly, having done a lot of mindfulness stuff for the last couple of years, the mantra thing is interesting. But I can tell you that it's nothing special. It's a very basic mantra that seems to do the job pretty well.
And when you're doing that at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning, are you doing it under your breath so you don't wake up TK, or are you dead set just building it out as loud as you can?
No, so with TM, your mantra is actually in the mind.
Okay.
So when they teach you, you start doing it under your breath until you get it. And then what the point is that I guess the whole point of it is that thoughts are fine. So when you think of, say, mindfulness, where you're trying to clear out thoughts, whereas with TM, thoughts are completely okay. And when you find yourself going off down a train of thought, which is probably just with my work schedule there, a lot of people could imagine, when I wake up in the morning, there is a lot of things going on in the head. You use the mantra to kind of settle yourself back and settle the mind and pretty much run them parallel. And what usually happens is, and again, I'm not great on the science of it or anything like that, but the mantra will then usually disseminate the thought, and then you'll go into a bit of clarity of mind, and then another thought will come up. And you sort of repeat this process where you're not trying to block out thoughts, you're just trying to exist with it, and then I guess meditate yourself into the moment. Yeah, it seems to be going pretty well, to be honest.
Interesting.
I think it's actually one of the reasons that at the moment I'm sort of sustaining the current workload reasonably well.
And just on that, how do you juggle having multiple roles, especially if a couple of those roles or all of them sort of go haywire, something goes wrong in them, and they all kind of need some attention at a particular time? How do you manage that? Manage that juggle? It's hard enough juggling. It's hard juggling a kid, but juggling like high-powered work is actually probably a harder thing as well, because there's a lot more stakeholders than just a kid.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have a kid, but I do question sometimes with adults whether they progressed from being children. So I mean, hopefully I don't have too many people that listen that work for me, but thankfully, very rarely are all 4 of them going up the shit, which is good. And I do thankfully have amazing people involved in all of them, so that helps, like, more than I could say. In terms of juggling them, though, it is, and I definitely find the year becomes a bit cyclical, a bit roller coaster as well. It's not predictable when that happens, but yeah, usually at times, say 2 of them will just be going off pretty badly, and that is just, at the moment, I'm trying to work out a better strategy around saying no to things and delegating and those kind of bits and pieces, but it's all a bit of a learning. But at the moment, when they are going haywire, it's just doubling down and doing extra work, and usually that's at night, or being smarter of what I'm doing in the morning and how I'm managing things. But yeah, like I said, thankfully, I usually get to, I mean, I kind of envision them a little bit like they're spinning plates. Some of them are spinning just symmetrically in the middle, circular, lovely. Other ones start to wobble, so you go and spend a bit more time on that, and then you'll kind of cover a base somewhere else, and then you'll sort of double back and circle back to it. So I guess an example is the corporate role. The division that we're building is also a division that we're turning around as well. So that has probably in the last quarter taken a lot of my time and resources, but thankfully it's coincided with when we think of academia, university doesn't start until the end of Feb. So we get to do a lot of our background work at this time at uni. So yeah, where one's been going haywire, another one's been actually pretty subdued, and then what will happen is they'll generally flip. And yeah, it's sort of a do as best I can at the moment. But we did get 49% growth last month on the business, so the turnaround's happening nicely, which is good.
And how do you go with, I guess, managing different generations of staff as well? Like, you're a fairly young guy in a management role. You'd be managing people younger than you, the same age you and older than you. How do you, I guess, manage people of different generations, and you notice a different way that people of different generations need to be managed?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think I'm fortunate now, especially this year, that I suppose all 4 of the roles that I have are in healthcare or education of healthcare, or whatever that happens to be. The last couple of years, I've had a board seat and a couple of roles outside of healthcare, which have been fantastic learnings, but it makes it a lot harder when you're not across the same industry. And the other big thing around those roles was I got the first one when I was about 23, which was, I was the youngest person to get one of these roles. That was very, very challenging at the time because everyone was significantly older. And even in healthcare, like managing people now, because generally in healthcare, you've got to go to university for X amount of years. There's not many people that I'm currently managing that are younger than me. Most are sort of that 30 to 40 bracket, and then 40 to 50 bracket, and a couple above that. So I've found over the time that I've had to adjust sort of my style. And one of the things I've found that works really well is acknowledging when you do have intergenerational management, that there's stuff that I can run rings around 40, 50-year-olds in terms of maybe knowing a consumer market segment, technology, energy, bits and pieces like that. But there's stuff that, compared to what they know, I basically know jack shit. And acknowledging that regardless of whatever position, and I suppose this is another key point to add, is a lot of the things that I'm involved in, regardless of whatever the title is, I try and operate as an extremely flat structure rather than a hierarchical structure, because by operating in a flat structure, I can turn around and go to that person who has 15 years that, I mean, I haven't even been out of school for 15 years, and just be like, I know jack shit, you've got 15 years, how can we leverage that expertise with what I'm doing with this expertise so that we can both work towards X and Y, and sort of getting them along that does that X and Y, is that the same as your X and Y? And if it is, I find that it can work really well, but it's definitely a challenge. It's definitely something that I've had and experienced a number of incidences of ageism, which is certainly not nearly as bad as what I think can happen with gender bias and race, but it does give a little bit of an insight into some frustrations around that, in terms of, you know, environments where I walk in things and people would just turn around and go, yeah, we'll wait for your boss, and all these kind of things, and just, yeah, much worse than that. But to say that it's like, I don't want to come off as whingy or anything like that, because it's a really good opportunity, but it is challenging. Although I'm finding now that I'm getting a bit older, it's getting much better. And I think if you can just unite them under, well, we're both trying to get to, you know, X and Y, generationally we might look at it differently, but how can we use the best of mine and the best of yours to get us there? And this co-mentoring thing, and we instilled that, and I'm sort of instilling that now in the business that I'm looking at, to going, well, let's move away from do as you're told, because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which way you want to look at it, the millennial generation definitely does question authority in a different way to previous generations, which is not to go down that path. So rather than the, you know, I've been here 15 years, this is how it is, do as you're told, we're in a disruptive world. So how can they teach you something, and how can you give, you know, show respect to that, but then how can you actually give them something of value? And that is a piece that I'm finding that's working not too bad at the moment. It's a very long-winded way of answering your question, though.
Well, it wasn't an easy question to answer. There's a lot of moving parts. People.
Can I just go back to the, or spin back to your spinning plates analogy there, Ryan? Do you ever find your different roles sort of cross over in terms of, you know, you do your teaching on a Wednesday night, but with your corporate role, I know you have to travel a lot for that. So is there any times throughout the year where you need to be somewhere else, but you've got a teaching engagement, or are you pretty strict on the way you sort of organise your meetings and your travel?
Yeah, I'm getting better. It's something that I'm trying to work on this year, about really like blocking my time. So essentially, when I am at, say, my corporate role, that's when I'm at my corporate role, and, you know, because vice versa, I'll get phone calls around the teaching or the academic role or the research or something like that while I'm at my corporate role, or something about our businesses. So I'm trying to be better with blocking my time. But, you know, to answer your question, I guess all the time they do cross over. Thankfully, all of them are accommodating of each other, and they're flexible enough that I can kind of plug and play when I need to. So for example, so I'm off to Sydney on Monday for the first half of next week. Now that's meant that I've had to tweak something to do with my education role, which has been pretty easy to do, because I'll move some time away from my corporate role, because it'll take some of my Wednesday, and I'll go and do that on my Thursday. So I am fortunate in that whilst they do cross over somewhat regularly, it is not too bad to turn around and go, okay, well, if I swap that day for that day, it's not too bad. When we have the set teaching stuff though, so when I'm, say, talking at an event or lecturing or something like that, then obviously those times are just non-negotiable, and I've got to make them work.
Interesting. Now, I know TK's motivated career-wise as well. You mentioned before that you'll catch up for sort of dinner and you'll have coffee in the morning. What other sort of interaction during the week do you have? Like, it seems like you live very sort of together but independent lives, if that makes sense, which is good. It's just, how do you, I guess, maintain those constant touch bases of your relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we've been told a couple of times that about that, you know, independent but together lives, which seem to be working pretty well for us. Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do is we touch point with each other every day at work. So we're just a message here, checking in, how's the day, a message about something that we might have seen. So I don't think there's a day that goes by where we don't touch point during the day. And then yeah, in the morning we'll catch up for a coffee. That's probably another reason why we do have a few dinners out, is because we'll get to say a Wednesday and be like, yeah, it's been a solid week or whatever. Let's go out and spend 2 hours and just enjoy and chill out. We also regularly, because we live in the city, I suppose, we regularly, let's say maybe every 2 months on average, we would do it. We'll go away for a weekend. So we'll both work on the weekend, and we'll go, Melbourne's really good where you drive an hour and a half out, there's beautiful countryside, and you go stay there for a weekend. And we do make sure we bank in a few holidays and that kind of thing. And yeah, the Sundays are an absolute non-negotiable in terms of we go out to brunch every Sunday. So I guess across that, and the big thing is just, even though it may seem at times that, because I might say be at the office by 8, I might not get back till 7, she might be the same, but we've probably had 4 or 5 communication interactions throughout that whole time together. So I think it's just, yeah, communicating helps quite a bit.
Kane touched last week on his method with his partner about how they set out their week or their month Excel spreadsheet style on the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself, Ryan? What do you and TK do? I imagine that you haven't got an Excel spreadsheet. It's probably.
I didn't touch on last week that we also have a shared calendar, in that we can both put things in the calendar so the other one knows what's going on.
Wow.
That's a handy tool.
Yeah, so we have thought about the shared calendar. We haven't done it yet. Definitely don't have an Excel spreadsheet because she's very good at Excel and I'm very shit ass at it. But to be honest, yeah, we surprisingly don't have any structure to it. I think it's a big thing is, and I guess we'll call each other out on it. Usually I'm getting called out on it, but because we kind of wake up and pick what we have for dinner that day, and because we don't have a kid, we don't have to be as routine as I think some other people do. So we'll kind of be talking in the morning, and I'll be like, oh, I've got an event tonight, that kind of thing. And because we live in a city, everything's nearby, so the planning doesn't have to be as much. But we generally spend most Sunday nights together. We caught up with some friends this Sunday gone, some really good friends of ours, but most of the time we'll turn down Sunday stuff. And during that time, again, just communication, like, how does your week look? What are you doing? Weeks in advance. The flights we do share. So yeah, for example, flights to Sydney next week, they get put in both mine and TK's calendar. But beyond interstate travel, I think we just kind of try and touch point as much and literally go, like, I'm out tomorrow and Thursday night. So when we go food shopping, we only shop for a week. We go, well, we actually don't need that much because, oh yeah, I've got 2 nights out. She's out Thursday night. So just through, I think, little things like that, we've always got a finger on the pulse on each other's calendar. But no, definitely nothing as sophisticated as an Excel doc yet.
I'll never leave that Excel document down, will I? I don't think it could have just been a piece of paper I scribbled something on it. Just the fact that I used Excel, I'm going to be tarred with that brush for the rest of my life.
But it is so like it's
not really. I'm actually not that organised at all. Just the necessity of having to do that. So you have those constant touch points throughout the week where you kind of go, I've got this, I've got that on. So you don't need that sort of structured thing. You're not outside and cooking dinner. There's not that sort of maybe constant juggle of other bits and pieces going on, which is sort of you have to be around for often, I guess.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we do is most nights we are having dinner together, and most of the time it's really actually like no phones, no the TV, actually just talking about what's your day, what's going on at the moment, getting across the big work projects, the big wins, the big losses, the stresses. On the productivity app that I have on my phone, one of the things to do daily is to celebrate a win for the day, which can be really hard on some days, but it does trigger you and make you think of a win for the day. So usually at dinner, we'll talk about, all right, so what was your win for the day? Trying to do a bit of gratitude, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I would say most nights of the week, we're constantly talking about the last day or the last 2 days with each other and what the next day is. And that at the moment seems to be okay for us. And I suppose one of the reasons that we're probably doubling down on it as much as we can now is trying to, I guess, put the work up front so that we do have the opportunity to wind back and spend a fair bit of time when we do have little midgets that aren't fur babies.
Well, gents, that about wraps up for this week. Thank you very much for sharing your rolling week and day, Ryan. It's eye-opening. And do subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes. Leave a review. Every review helps us. If you want to suggest a topic, please leave a comment on the website, on any of the places where our blogs are. But most importantly, thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say serving, of Daddy Eats Last. Maddie, you might be doing your day. Catch you next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.